Let's look at the Northern Europeans. What were their ancient writing systems? Oh, that's right. The Northern Europeans didn't have any writing systems. Well, let's look at their architecture then. Oh, I forgot. They didn't have any architecture either, though they did have this, a pile of rocks. And they don't even know what purpose this rock pile served. Some white people say it was an ancient astronomy lab, though they still can't tell you what it was these ancient whites were allegedly looking at. Other whites say it was a meeting place for druids. Others still say it was a landing spot for UFOs. Perhaps the reason the Northern Europeans are so confused about their history is because until recently, they largely didn't have one. We'll take Britain as an example. Literacy of any kind didn't come to the English people until the Romans invaded in 41 AD. But even then, it wasn't the Brits doing any writing. It was the Romans, such as the Roman historian Tacitus, who reveals that the British were naked savages. To further show their disdain for the British, the Romans referred to them as Britunculi, Little Britons, like calling them children. The historian Strabo described the British as war-mad and always ready for battle. Tacitus gave an account of the British ritual of human sacrifice, saying they deemed it indeed a duty to cover their altars with the blood of captives and to consult their deities through human entrails. Fighting naked, barbaric customs sounds kind of familiar, doesn't it? The Roman attempts to domesticate the English predictably ended in failure. At about 410 AD, the Romans left. But even after 4 centuries of study, the English had utterly failed to educate themselves, because it would still be another 2 centuries before the Saxons, Germanic immigrants from Europe who would come to Britain and managed to teach the English to write. Imagine that! There have been people in Britain for over 12,000 years, but they didn't learn how to translate their grunts into written symbols until about 650 AD. And had it not been for the Romans, who the Saxons learned Latin from, the English would still be sitting in their caves, grunting like animals and totally unable to write. They didn't have a writing system, and they weren't on the verge of making one. And for that matter, neither were the Saxons, the Russians, or any other group of Northern Europeans. The Romans literally had to come and show these people how to wear clothes and how to write their names. So, how can they claim a connection to Greece when their first contact with the outside world came with the Romans? When you have no history, you have to make one up. Now we see why they are so desperate to attach themselves to Greece. It's either that or admit that every other group of people on Earth had managed to create writing systems and architecture and forms of government and civilization except them. Now, oh yes, black truth hurts. So in summation, let's make it clear to the Euro clowns what Africa contributed to the world and what the Europeans